Good morning. We're here now with Dr. Todd Savine, Director of Savine Care Clinics, and you guys have been dealing with people who are stressed out. A lot of us have stress in our lives, but it can actually cause a medical problem, right?
Yeah, stress leads to a lot of chronic pain, a lot of chronic illnesses and health issues in general. Yeah,
okay.
Very much so.
The way this idea came up, we actually had a quiz here at WREX that you guys sent over for us to take, and it kind of went through point by point some of the symptoms in your life that you could have if you're stressed out, and I don't think any of us realized how stressed we really are.
Yeah, it's fascinating what people check off on it. So the purpose of that is to create awareness in somebody's health, and a lot of times as people get stressed out, it starts to affect their health, and it's a slow erosion. So the purpose of that, again, is to bring them more aware of what conditions they're suffering from so they can take some form of action on it to improve their quality of life.
Okay, let's take a look at the quiz now, because you guys came up with this quiz yourselves, and it's really kind of interesting. So kind of walk us through, because the first one just says circle any of the symptoms below that you've experienced in the last 6 weeks. And we have a list of just some of the main ones here, but you know, pain, tingling, numbness. These are not things that I would have realized were associated with stress.
Yeah, what happens is the definition of stress, medically speaking, is an assault on the body's nervous system, either a chemical assault or a physical or an emotional assault. So since we can't scream like little kids, right, it's not socially acceptable, yeah. What happens is you internalize that and the muscles actually get tightened. And as those muscles tighten, it creates chronic scar tissue formation through the neck and the back and arms and different parts of the body. And that contraction of muscles causes different symptoms that we recognize, such as, say, headaches, neck pain, back pain. If it affects a nerve, it can cause tingling or numbness, things of that nature.
I know that when you get really, really angry, you can feel physically, you can kind of feel the anger surging through you, but stress is not something that you necessarily notice. I mean, you feel frantic, but how do you know what the difference is? How can you tell?
When you talk, the definition probably would be what you're talking about is kind of that inner animal when you get really angry.
Yeah,
right?
it's like an inner animal. Yeah,
everything just tightens in you, and you see it. You see that expression over somebody's face. But even day-to-day stress now, where I think with email on phones and everything is supposed to make our life easier, and it's actually gotten, I think, a little worse. So as the technology advances, our lives become more chaotic, where everything has to be right now, and our adaptability to that stress perhaps isn't as high as it should be, or as we think it is.
Sure. So let's bring up that first question again. If you have any of these symptoms, if you're having tingling, or you said even tightness in your shoulders,
just a lot of times
neck.
Tightness, or you consistently hear women say, "Rub the knots out of my neck and shoulders."
I do that all the time.
Yeah,
maybe
common.
I'm stressed.
It's very common, probably at some point.
I think this is going to be more educational for me than for anybody. Now let's get to the next question. How does this affect your quality of life? Because this is important to look at too.
That's probably one of the most important ones. So the survey we have on there is you want to look at it to make sure it's not something that happens on an ongoing or weekly basis. And really, if you look back, quality of life is the most important thing we have. Right? It's fascinating. In fact, if you speak to elderly people and you have them reflect back on their life, what the most important things are, they always say relationships and then the quality of life.
Yeah, it wasn't getting that last letter written or money or whatever.
It's never job promotions. No, it's always relationships, right, and quality of life.
So what do you need to be looking at then? Because the words you have here are moody, irritable, it interrupts your sleep, or you're restricted on daily activities.
I think the most common thing that we hear from patients, and what's most fascinating, is if a husband and wife or spouse or significant other comes into the office and one of them leaves the room, perhaps to use the restroom, and the doctor's in there with the spouse is what they say is always substantially different than what the patient says. And I think it's kind of a slow erosion of your health and you don't realize it. So you become something that you're not. And everybody can relate to the fact that if they're stressed out and they're short with their kids or their spouse, or they're not really the person they know they can be.
Or I think we all know somebody who you love them, they're your great friend or they're your favorite family member, but they have their little moments.
They do, everybody does, So it's understanding that and controlling it, right?
Sure. So let's go ahead into the next one then, because how does this affect your work? And not just your work, but I'm guessing whatever it is you do with your day, if you're a stay-at-home parent or whatever.
Yeah, everything. If you're a stay-at-home parent, it's probably most important because that means it affects your guidance you're giving your children, right?
Sure.
And that brings us back to relationships again. So work is productivity. If you feel better, you're more productive, you're in better spirits. Your communications with coworkers and outside sales are better than they would normally be. So it affects you in every capacity.
Yeah, I was just actually talking with a coworker about this last night. We were talking about situations where someone will scream at you and they don't realize, I think, how tough they're really being, and it's possible that's what they're going through.
Yeah, exactly. They're usually just sharp-tongued. They're very direct, and it's coming from a different place. So it's really the meaning you give it.
So some of the bullet points that you have here under does this affect your work, you're talking about decision making. I didn't realize that could affect your decisions.
It can, yeah. If you're stressed out, to briefly describe it, is let's say you have, they're called archetypes. So one of those archetypes is a personality or a behavior which is called a warrior, and that's more of a defense one. So if you're in a very stressful state, right, and people probably can relate to this if they have kids or if you're a mother or father, and your kids come in the room and they're, you know, whining about something, or perhaps they just want to grab you to show you something that they made, and you snap at them, and really that, you know, they came to get your attention from a place of love, and you were real short with them from something that had nothing to do with them, but that still affects, again, their quality of life, the relationship, and the dynamics of that. So if you're stressed, even if you're not feeling the physiological responses, that's still affecting you.
Now, is there such a thing as positive stress at work? I know that here, being at a TV station, we have a deadline that we have to hit for those newscasts, and being a producer especially, it can be extremely stressful just from my own standpoint, but it seems like sometimes that stress kind of motivates us to get it done.
You're a different animal.
So, but I mean, is there a good stress and a bad stress, or is it all bad?
Well, no, it's not all bad. What you're talking about really is like it's not necessarily a stress that's good or bad. You're talking about deadlines, and it's the excitement and the endorphins that are released by thriving on a deadline.
That's different than feeling like you're spiraling out of control.
It's similar to an athlete that's thriving on a deadline on a clock, or a boxer, or a football player. Or, that's stress. It's a very stressful job, right? But it also drives you, or you harness that, and a lot of times the people that take on those careers are able to leave that behind them.
Sure, so that's not the stress that we're talking about.
No, I think just the day-to-day stress that affects your body, your health, your relationships, your moods, your coworkers. And even, I'm sure you realize, there's days that you're very stressed, but still a fun, happy day. And there's days you're stressed and it's not a happy day.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, and we talk about decreased productivity, being exhausted at the end of the day. We actually do need to take a quick break. We still have more of this quiz to get to. Really, really interesting stuff. Plus, we're going to talk about what you can actually do to address these problems, because that's what we really want as a solution.
Yeah, you want to handle them.
We all want to stop being so stressed out. So we'll take a quick break and we'll talk about that coming up.